A flight that changed everything. The low hum of the airplane engines vibrated through the first-class cabin, blending with the occasional clink of glasses and murmured conversations. Logan Carter barely registered the sound as he adjusted the cuff of his custom-tailored suit, eyes fixed on the financial reports on his tablet. His world revolved around numbers, investments, and billion-dollar negotiations. Efficiency was his priority, and every wasted second felt like money slipping through his fingers. This flight, a rare inconvenience in his meticulously scheduled life, was unavoidable. His private jet had been grounded for maintenance, leaving him no choice but to endure commercial travel. He had almost canceled the trip, but a crucial international merger demanded his presence, and so he endured the mild irritation of sharing space with strangers. Logan exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. He wasn't a man who allowed emotions to interfere with logic, yet something about today felt off. A nagging sensation clawed at him, something beneath the surface of his highly controlled world. Dismissing it, he flipped to the next report. Then he saw her. Auburn hair, cascading over delicate shoulders. The elegant curve of a face he once knew so intimately. Claire Monroe. Logan's grip on his tablet tightened. For a moment, he thought he had imagined it, a cruel trick of fate. But no, she was there, just a few rows ahead of him, seated comfortably with two small boys beside her. Something inside him shifted, an emotion he had long buried trying to claw its way to the surface. Claire. 3 years. 3 years since he had last seen her. 3 years since he had walked away. No, since they had walked away from each other. But it wasn't just her presence that sent shock waves through his carefully composed demeanor. It was them. The two little boys sitting beside her. They were fidgeting, their small hands busy with a coloring book and a juice box. But what struck Logan the most was their faces, their sharp jawlines, their deep blue eyes, the same stormy blue that stared back at him in the mirror every morning. A sudden, ice-cold realization gripped him. He knew those boys. No, he didn't know them, but they were familiar in a way that was undeniable. He could see himself in them, as if looking at old childhood photographs of his own past. Logan's heart hammered against his ribs, his mind racing through the years, through the possibilities. No, this isn't possible, is it? The boys looked to be about 3 years old. 3 years. The same amount of time since he had last seen Claire. A cold weight settled in his stomach. One of the boys let out a delighted laugh, completely unaware of the world-shattering revelation, unraveling just a few feet away. "Mommy, look," one of them exclaimed, holding up a scribbled drawing. Claire smiled, soft, warm, the way she used to smile at him. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Logan's pulse pounded in his ears. His mind raced back to the last time he had seen Claire. They had ended things with sharp words, a finality neither had wanted but both had accepted. He had been too focused on his company, too determined to build an empire, and she had wanted something different, something more. But had she been hiding this from him? Had she chosen to erase him from their lives? He clenched his jaw. Had she tried to tell me? Had he been too distracted, too consumed by ambition, to notice? His throat tightened. The idea that Claire had raised them alone, had gone through pregnancy, sleepless nights, and first words, without him, burned through his chest like acid. His gaze locked onto her, studying every detail. She still carried herself with quiet confidence, but there was a subtle exhaustion in her eyes, a strength that spoke of battles fought alone. And she still hadn't noticed him. Or maybe she had, and was ignoring him. That would be exactly like Claire. Logan had always prided himself on control. He built companies, shaped industries, made decisions that altered the course of markets. Yet for the first time in years, he felt utterly powerless. The flight stretched on, every passing second thick with tension he could barely contain. He should look away, return to his work, bury himself in numbers and calculations. But he couldn't. Because he had questions, and Claire Monroe had the answers. As the plane descended, Logan's resolve solidified. He had spent too long living in a world where everything was planned, predicted, and controlled. This was unexpected, but he wouldn't ignore it. When the wheels touched down, passengers stirred, gathering their belongings. Claire reached for the bags, her movements efficient as she adjusted the boys' jackets. Now or never. Logan unbuckled his seatbelt, standing with the quiet precision of a man used to getting what he wanted. As soon as the aisle cleared enough, he stepped forward. Claire, her hands stilled. For a moment, she didn't turn. Then, slowly, she lifted her gaze, meeting his. Recognition flickered in her eyes, surprise, hesitation, and something deeper, something she quickly masked. But Logan had seen it. A lump formed in his throat. She straightened, her shoulders tense. Logan. The single word carried the weight of 3 years of silence. His gaze flicked downward to the boys, who were now staring up at him with the same curiosity. His sons. His chest tightened. He forced himself to keep his voice even. "We need to talk." Claire exhaled, glancing around at the gathering passengers. Her voice was calm but firm. "Not here." Logan nodded, jaw clenched. "Then don't run." Her eyes flashed with something unreadable. "I never ran, Logan." With that, she turned, guiding the boys down the aisle. Logan followed, because for the first time in his life, this wasn't about business, power, or control. It was about something far more important, and he wasn't letting it slip away. Unfinished business. The airport terminal buzzed with the usual chaos. People hurrying to their next gate, families reuniting with tearful embraces, and business travelers power-walking to their next meeting. But Logan Carter noticed none of it. His world had just shifted on its axis, and the only thing anchoring him to reality was the woman walking in front of him, and the 2 boys at her side. Claire Monroe. She was as composed as ever, though he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand tightened around the strap of her bag as she moved with careful purpose. Her long auburn hair swayed as she guided the boys through the terminal, avoiding his gaze even as she knew he was right behind her. Logan's mind reeled with everything that had just unfolded on that plane. He had gone from reviewing financial projections to discovering that he might have children. His children. He had yet to confirm it, but the resemblance was too strong to be a coincidence. 3 years. 3 years, Claire. His throat tightened, frustration bubbling beneath his carefully controlled demeanor. This was Claire, strong-willed, stubborn as hell. If she had kept this from him, she had done so intentionally. But why? As they neared the baggage claim area, Logan seized his chance. Claire. She didn't stop, but he saw the slight hesitation in her step before she continued walking. "Claire, stop." She sighed, turning just enough to face him, her expression unreadable. "Not here, Logan. Not now." "Then when?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. An edge that came from knowing he had missed out on something he never even knew existed. Claire exhaled sharply, glancing down at the 2 boys who were now distracted by the luggage conveyor belt. One of them, Noah, if he remembered correctly from the flight, was reaching toward the moving belt with wide-eyed curiosity. The other boy, Liam, stood back, watching cautiously, as if analyzing the machine before making a move. Logan's chest tightened. They were opposites, yet he could see himself in both of them. He tore his gaze away from them, fixing his attention back on Claire. "Are they mine?" She flinched, just barely. But he caught it. That was all the confirmation he needed. The air between them thickened. Claire met his gaze, and for a second, he saw something flicker in her stormy eyes. Guilt? Anger? Fear? Finally, she spoke. "We can't do this here." "Then tell me where." She hesitated, biting her lip, and he could see the war waging inside her. Claire Monroe never did anything lightly. She calculated, planned, prepared. And right now, she was weighing whether she should let him in at all. Finally, she exhaled. There's a cafe near the exit. Give me a few minutes to get them settled. And then we'll talk. No. Logan's voice was firm. I want to meet them properly, Claire. Her jaw tightened. Logan, they don't know you. The words were like a punch to the gut. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay calm. Whose fault is that? Her eyes flashed, but before she could respond, Noah turned from the baggage belt and tugged on her sleeve. Mommy, I'm hungry. Claire sighed, running a hand through her hair before nodding. Fine. We'll talk at the cafe, but keep it simple. Logan nodded, knowing that simple was the last thing this was going to be. The cafe confrontation. The small airport cafe was tucked away from the main bustle of the terminal, offering a rare pocket of quiet. Logan sat stiffly at the table, watching as Claire settled the boys into their seats across from him. Noah, the livelier of the two, immediately grabbed a menu and started pointing at random items. I want pancakes. Liam, more reserved, looked at the menu with a furrowed brow. It's lunchtime, no. You can't have pancakes. Noah frowned. Why not? Liam sighed, exasperated. Because it's not breakfast. Logan smirked despite himself. The conversation was ridiculous, but there was something almost familiar about it. Claire, ever patient, ran a hand down Noah's back. You can have pancakes if you want, sweetheart. Noah grinned triumphantly at Liam. Liam simply rolled his eyes, looking unimpressed. Logan leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. I used to argue with my brother the same way when we were kids. Both boys turned to him for the first time, really seeing him. Logan took a breath. I had an older brother. He always thought he was smarter than me, too. He directed the last part at Liam, who eyed him suspiciously. Noah, however, was more open. Did you win the arguments? Logan chuckled. Depends on who you ask. Noah grinned. Liam simply studied him, tilting his head slightly. Claire cleared her throat. Logan, don't. Don't what? He cut her off, eyes locked on hers. Talk to them. Get to know them. Claire exhaled sharply, rubbing her temple. The tension was suffocating, but Logan refused to back down. He turned to the boys again. I'm Logan. His voice softened slightly. What are your names? Noah answered immediately. I'm Noah. Then, jabbing a thumb toward his brother, he added, That's Liam. He's the serious one. Liam shot his twin a glare. I'm not. Logan smiled. I don't know. You look pretty serious to me. Liam narrowed his eyes, clearly analyzing him, and Logan felt a strange sense of déjà vu. That calculating look, it was something he himself had perfected over years in business. Claire shifted in her seat. Logan, what do you want? His amusement faded. His expression hardened. I think you already know the answer to that. Claire inhaled deeply, looking away for a moment before meeting his gaze again. I did what I thought was best. Logan's fingers curled into a fist. Best for who? Her lips pressed together. But before she could respond, Liam interrupted. Mommy, who is he? Silence fell over the table. Claire's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard, clearly unprepared for the question. Noah, ever curious, turned back to Logan. Are you Mommy's friend? Logan's gaze flickered to Claire. She looked cornered, torn between a past she had buried and a future she had tried to protect. Logan exhaled, forcing himself to take it slow. Something like that. Claire's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but she didn't correct him. Not yet. The boys, satisfied for now, returned their attention to the menu. But Logan knew this was just the beginning. Because he wasn't walking away. Not this time. A truth too long buried. The tension at the small cafe table was thick, the unspoken words between Logan and Claire weighing as heavily as the years of silence between them. Noah, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between the adults, swung his feet beneath the chair as he happily stuffed a bite of syrup-drenched pancake into his mouth. Liam, ever observant, wasn't as easily distracted. His sharp blue eyes flicked between Logan and Claire, as if he was putting together a puzzle neither of them wanted to explain. Logan let the moment settle, watching Claire carefully. He knew her. He knew the way her fingers tapped on the table when she was thinking, the way she exhaled when she was gathering her thoughts. She was bracing herself, but for what, he wasn't entirely sure. Finally, she spoke. "This isn't the place for this conversation." Logan clenched his jaw. "Then let's go somewhere else." Claire hesitated. "We're in an airport, Logan." His patience was thin. "That's not an excuse." Her eyes flashed with frustration. "You don't just get to show up and demand answers. You don't just get to keep my children from me." She stiffened, but before she could snap back, Noah's syrup-covered hand tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, can we get ice cream after this?" Claire inhaled sharply, her shoulders relaxing just enough to keep her voice calm. "Maybe later, sweetheart." Noah pouted but returned to his meal, seemingly satisfied. Liam, however, wasn't letting go of his earlier question. His small fingers curled around his juice box as he looked directly at Logan. "Are you my dad?" A beat of silence. Claire went still. Logan's heart clenched. He should have been prepared for this moment, but hearing those words, so simple, so direct, sent a wave of emotions crashing over him. He met Liam's steady gaze. "I think so." Liam processed that quietly, glancing at his twin. Noah, with a mouth full of pancake, blinked in confusion. "But we don't have a dad," Noah said matter-of-factly. Claire flinched. Logan exhaled slowly, forcing his voice to remain steady. "You do." Liam frowned. "Then where have you been?" Logan's stomach tightened. He wasn't sure whether to feel heartbroken by the question or angry that it had to be asked at all. His eyes flicked to Claire, who was staring down at her plate, as if it held the answers she wasn't willing to give. "I didn't know about you," Logan admitted. "Until today." Liam's frown deepened, but Noah seemed more accepting. "Oh," he paused. "So now you know." Logan managed a small smile. "Yeah, now I know." Noah grinned. "Cool." And just like that, he went back to his food. But Liam wasn't as easily convinced. His tiny brows were furrowed as he studied Logan, his intelligent eyes filled with the questions Claire had been avoiding. Claire finally cleared her throat, her voice quiet but firm. "Logan, I need to take them home." Logan straightened. "I'm coming with you." Claire shook her head immediately. "Absolutely not." Logan's jaw clenched. "Claire, we need to talk. And I need to see where my sons live." Claire sighed, rubbing her temple. He could see the battle playing out in her mind. She was exhausted, emotionally, mentally, but she was also fiercely protective. Finally, she exhaled. "Fine, but you don't get to barge into our lives like you own them, Logan." His voice was quiet, but firm. "I don't want to own them, Claire. I just want to be part of them." She swallowed hard. Logan didn't miss the way Liam and Noah were watching them curiously, their small minds processing every word. Claire sighed. "Let's go." A home he never knew. The drive to Claire's apartment was quieter than Logan expected. The twins, exhausted from the excitement of the day, dozed off in their car seats. Logan sat in the passenger seat, his fingers drumming against his knee as he took in the surroundings. The neighborhood was modest, nothing extravagant, but not struggling either. A quiet street lined with trees, an apartment complex that looked well maintained. Claire pulled into a designated parking space, turning off the engine before unbuckling her seatbelt. Logan followed suit, stepping out of the car and watching as she carefully unbuckled the twins. Noah stretched and yawned, rubbing his sleepy eyes, while Liam blinked at Logan before wordlessly slipping his small hand into Claire's. That small gesture, so simple, so automatic, made something in Logan's chest ache. Claire led them up a short flight of stairs to the second floor, Unlocking the door with practiced ease, Logan stepped inside, immediately taking in the surroundings. The apartment was warm, cozy, lived in. The walls were decorated with drawings, crayon scribbles, and carefully colored dinosaurs, superheroes, and animals. The living room was filled with toys, a small bookshelf lined with bedtime stories, and a couch that looked like it had seen more nights of exhaustion than comfort. It was a home he had never known. Claire helped the twins out of their jackets before sending them to wash up. Logan remained near the door, taking it all in. "They're happy," Claire said softly. Logan turned to her. "I don't doubt that." She crossed her arms, leaning against the wall. "So what now?" Logan exhaled. "That's what I was going to ask you." She let out a quiet laugh, one filled with exhaustion, not humor. "You don't get to walk in after 3 years and act like you're part of this world, Logan." His jaw tightened. "I didn't walk away from them, Claire. You didn't tell me." Her expression wavered. "Would you have stayed?" Logan froze. Would he? 3 years ago, he had been a different man. Driven, ambitious, ruthless in his pursuit of success. He had made it clear that family wasn't part of his plan. But now, Logan clenched his fists. "I don't know, but I should have had the choice." Claire swallowed hard, looking away. "You're right." Logan blinked. He hadn't expected her to admit that. She exhaled. "I was scared, Logan. I knew you weren't the kind of man who wanted a family. And I was terrified of what that would mean for them." Logan's chest tightened. Claire met his gaze. "So I made the choice for you." Silence stretched between them. The sound of tiny footsteps broke the moment as Noah and Liam reappeared, both in their pajamas, still slightly groggy from the long day. Noah yawned. "Mommy, can he read us a story?" Claire stiffened. "Sweetheart, I don't." Logan cut in. "I'd love to." Liam tilted his head. "Do you know how to read kids' books?" Logan smirked. "I can try." Claire hesitated, but when she looked down at her sons, "They're sons," she sighed. "All right." Logan followed them to their room, stepping into their world for the first time. And as he sat down on the floor, holding a well-worn storybook in his hands, he realized something. This wasn't about winning. This wasn't about control. This was about them. And he wasn't walking away this time. The first bedtime story. Logan Carter had closed multi-billion-dollar deals, negotiated with some of the most ruthless businessmen in the world, and built an empire from the ground up. Yet, as he sat cross-legged on the floor of a small bedroom, holding a children's storybook in his hands, he had never felt more unprepared in his life. Noah and Liam sat in their tiny beds, bundled up in soft dinosaur-themed blankets. The room was filled with scattered toys, stacks of bedtime books, and glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling. A world he had never been part of. Claire stood at the doorway, arms crossed, watching. Her expression was unreadable, but he could sense the conflict within her. This moment was a test. Logan exhaled, flipping open the book. "All right, The Brave Little Dinosaur. You guys ready?" Noah immediately grinned. "I love this one." Liam, ever the skeptic, narrowed his eyes. "Do you even know how to do the voices?" Logan smirked. "I'll give it a shot." As he started reading, his voice took on a deep, dramatic tone for the big dinosaur and a tiny, high-pitched one for the little dinosaur. Noah giggled instantly. Liam, however, remained serious, watching him carefully. Claire was still in the doorway, arms crossed, not saying a word. As Logan continued, something strange happened. The room, once filled with tension, softened. The boys leaned in, their eyes growing wide with each new twist in the story. Noah laughed loudly at the funny parts, while Liam simply nodded along, occasionally making a quiet comment about what the little dinosaur should do next. By the time Logan reached the last page, Noah was already half asleep, his small body curled up under his blanket. Liam, though still awake, yawned and rubbed his eyes. fighting sleep. Logan closed the book gently, placing it on the nightstand. Silence filled the room. Then Liam spoke, his voice quiet. "You didn't do too bad." Logan chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." Liam stared at him for a long moment, his deep blue eyes mirroring Logan's own. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" Logan's breath caught. Claire shifted slightly in the doorway, but she said nothing. Logan met Liam's gaze. "Do you want me to?" Liam hesitated, then gave the smallest of nods. Noah, half asleep, mumbled, "Yeah, come back." Logan's chest tightened. He had spent years chasing numbers, power, and success. And yet, two small boys had just given him something no deal, no amount of money ever could. He glanced at Claire. She was still guarded, still wary, but she didn't object. Finally, she sighed and stepped into the room, kneeling beside Liam to tuck him in properly. "All right, time for sleep." Logan stood slowly, feeling like he was stepping out of a dream. As he reached the door, a tiny voice stopped him. "Good night, Logan." He turned. Liam was still half awake, his voice quiet, but sincere. Noah echoed sleepily, "Good night." Logan's throat tightened, but he managed a small smile. "Good night, boys." Then, with one last look, he stepped out of the room. A private conversation. The moment the door clicked shut behind them, Claire let out a breath and turned to him, arms crossed. "What exactly are you doing, Logan?" Logan ran a hand through his hair. "What do you think I'm doing?" "I'm trying to get to know them." Claire scoffed. "Just like that. You think you can walk in here, read them a story, and suddenly be part of their lives?" Logan clenched his jaw. "I don't expect it to happen overnight, Claire. But I'm not walking away." She rubbed her temples, clearly exhausted. "This isn't just about you. It's about them. I need to know that you're serious before I let them get attached." Logan's frustration flared. "I am serious. Do you think I would be here if I wasn't?" Claire met his gaze, her eyes searching his. "I don't know, Logan. I don't know what you're capable of anymore." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair." Her expression softened just slightly, but her voice remained firm. "I had to make decisions without you, Logan. I had to be their everything. And now, suddenly, you show up and expect me to hand over trust like it's easy." Logan took a deep breath, trying to control the emotions raging inside him. "I can't change the past, Claire. But I can be here now, and I will be. Every day, if I have to." She exhaled, looking down for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "Don't make promises you can't keep." Logan held her gaze. "I don't break promises." Claire studied him, as if searching for a lie. For once, she didn't find one. Finally, she sighed. "I need time, Logan." "Time for what?" "Time to figure out what this means for all of us." Logan exhaled sharply, but nodded. "Then take it. But don't shut me out." She hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. And for now, that was enough. The next morning, Claire woke up to the smell of coffee. She frowned, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. It was early, too early for the boys to be up yet. Padding out of her bedroom, she stopped in her tracks. Logan was in the kitchen, making coffee. In her kitchen. He was still in the same button-down from yesterday, the sleeves rolled up, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. He looked different, less like the powerful businessman who had walked back into her life yesterday and more like someone who belonged here. He turned when he heard her, raising an eyebrow. "Morning." She blinked. "What are you doing?" He smirked. "Making coffee. You still take it black, right?" Claire folded her arms. "You stayed." Logan shrugged. "I wasn't going to leave without saying goodbye to them." Her stomach twisted. She had half expected him to disappear, to wake up and realize this was just another unfinished chapter in their past. But he was still here. Logan poured 2 cups, setting one on the counter for her. "We need to talk, Claire. Really talk." Claire wrapped her fingers around the warm mug, staring at him. He was serious. She sighed. "Yeah, we do." Before she could say more, small footsteps padded into the kitchen. Logan. Noah, still in his pajamas, grinned sleepily and ran straight to him. Logan barely had time to react before tiny arms wrapped around his leg in a quick hug. Logan looked down, stunned. Claire's breath caught. Liam trailed behind, yawning. "You're still here." Logan swallowed. "Yeah, I am." Liam nodded once, as if approving of this fact. And just like that, everything changed. Because Logan had just taken his first real step into their lives. And neither Claire nor the boys could pretend otherwise anymore. No more running. Logan stood frozen for a moment, looking down at Noah, who was still latched onto his leg in an innocent but completely unexpected hug. He had spent the last 24 hours processing the fact that he had children, sons, but nothing had prepared him for the warmth of their acceptance. He wasn't sure what to do. His hands, more accustomed to signing multi-million-dollar contracts than comforting children, hovered awkwardly before he finally settled on ruffling Noah's messy hair. Noah beamed up at him, completely oblivious to the emotions warring inside Logan. "Can you make pancakes?" Logan smirked. "I can order the best pancakes in the city." Noah's eyes widened. "Whoa." Liam, standing by the kitchen entrance, crossed his arms. "That's not the same as making them." Logan chuckled. "Fair point." He turned to Claire, arching a brow. "You have pancake mix." Claire, still standing by the counter with her coffee, narrowed her eyes. "You're not seriously making them breakfast." Logan shrugged. "Why not?" She exhaled, rubbing her temple. "Because you're not staying." The words were like a splash of cold water. Logan straightened. "I stayed the night so I wouldn't leave without seeing them, Claire. I didn't plan to intrude." Claire scoffed. "You don't think showing up out of nowhere is intrusive. I don't think finding out I have kids and wanting to be in their lives is wrong." Her lips parted slightly, but she had no immediate retort. Noah and Liam both looked between them, clearly picking up on the tension. Noah tugged on Logan's sleeve. "Are you gonna leave now?" Logan crouched down, meeting Noah's sleepy but hopeful gaze. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep, but he knew one thing for certain. "I'll always come back." Noah seemed satisfied with that answer, nodding happily before running off to the living room with boundless energy. Liam lingered, studying Logan for a long moment. "Mommy says people don't always stay." Claire visibly tensed. Logan kept his gaze steady. "She's right. But I'm not people. I'm your dad." Liam considered this, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before following his brother out of the kitchen. Claire let out a breath as soon as they were gone, rubbing her face. "You shouldn't say things like that if you don't mean them." Logan turned to her fully. "I do mean them." She shook her head. "You don't understand, Logan. If you leave, they won't forget it. They'll be waiting. Every day. Every time the door opens. Every time the phone rings." The raw emotion in her voice hit him like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about him proving himself to her. It was about them. About the boys. Logan exhaled. "I'm not walking away, Claire. But I need you to stop pushing me away before I've even had a chance." She swallowed hard, looking away. Logan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think I'll fail them, and maybe you're right to be afraid of that. But I don't fail, Claire. When I want something, I don't stop until I have it." Claire scoffed lightly. "They're not a business deal, Logan." "I know," he said quietly. "They're my sons." She met his gaze then, something raw flickering in her expression before she closed herself off again. Finally, she sighed. "I need time." Logan nodded. "Then take it. But I'll be back tomorrow." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You don't have to prove anything to me, Logan." "I'm not proving anything to you," he said. I'm proving it to them. Claire inhaled sharply but didn't argue. That was progress. For the first time since stepping onto that plane, Logan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. And for the first time in his life, his empire, his business, his wealth, all of it felt secondary to something far more important: his family, a father's promise. Logan Carter had spent most of his life chasing power. He had built an empire with his own hands, made billion-dollar deals before most men even had their morning coffee, and shaped industries through sheer determination. But as he drove through the quiet streets toward Claire's apartment the next morning, all of that felt insignificant. Because today, he wasn't a CEO. Today, he wasn't the man commanding boardrooms. Today, he was just a father trying to earn his place in the lives of two little boys who barely knew him. A tense welcome. When Logan knocked on the door, he half expected Claire to ignore him. Instead, she opened it almost immediately. She looked different, tired, maybe. Or maybe she had spent the night preparing for whatever conversation they were about to have. Her arms were crossed, but she didn't slam the door in his face. "You're early." Logan smirked. "And you're surprised." She sighed and stepped aside, letting him in. "They're eating breakfast." As Logan entered, the familiar warmth of their small apartment greeted him. He had spent years in luxury: penthouse suites, five-star hotels, private estates, but none of those places had ever felt like this. Lived in, real. His sons were sitting at the small dining table, their tiny feet dangling off the chairs. Noah was stuffing his mouth with a waffle, syrup smeared on his cheek. Liam, on the other hand, was eating carefully, cutting his food into perfect little squares before taking each bite. Noah noticed him first. Logan. Claire winced at how easily his name rolled off Noah's tongue, but she said nothing. Liam looked up as well, watching him silently, his eyes sharp and calculating. "You came back." Logan met his gaze. "Told you I would." Liam didn't respond right away, but after a moment, he gave a small nod. Approval, maybe. Logan pulled out a chair, sitting down at the table with them. "What's for breakfast?" Noah held up a half-eaten waffle. "Mommy makes the best ones." Logan smirked. "That's so." He glanced at Claire. "Didn't know you could cook." Claire rolled her eyes, but there was the ghost of a smile there. "You never stuck around long enough to find out." The words weren't meant to hurt, but they stung anyway. Logan knew he had missed a lot, and that realization sat like a weight on his chest. As the boys ate, Logan leaned in slightly. "So, what's the plan for today?" Noah's eyes lit up. "The park. Can you come? Please." Claire stiffened slightly. "No." Logan didn't let her finish. "I'd love to." Liam tilted his head. "Do you know how to play soccer?" Logan smirked. "I might be a little rusty, but yeah." Noah gasped dramatically. "Can we play teams? Me and Liam against you." Claire sighed. "Boys, Logan might be too busy for." "I'm not." Logan cut in. Claire went silent. The boys, oblivious to the unspoken tension between the adults, cheered in excitement. Logan glanced at Claire, his voice lower now. "Let me do this, Claire." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, finally, she exhaled. "Fine, but don't screw this up, Logan." He nodded. "I won't." And for the first time in years, he meant it. The park. A new beginning. The park was filled with the sounds of laughter and activity. Families playing, kids running, the distant bark of a dog chasing after a ball. Logan had never been here before, but the way Noah and Liam ran ahead, already familiar with every inch of the place, told him this was their space, their world. And for the first time, Logan was stepping into it. Claire stayed on the sidelines, arms crossed, watching carefully. Logan, however, focused on the two tiny forces of energy standing before him. Noah, bouncing excitedly, declared, "Okay, me and Liam versus Logan." Liam nodded, more composed but just as determined. "We're going to win." Logan smirked. "That's so. All right, bring it on." And with that, the game began. Logan quickly realized two things. One, Noah was fearless, running at full speed, laughing wildly, with absolutely no strategy whatsoever. Two, Liam was smart. He didn't just run. He watched, calculated, waited for the right moment. Between the two of them, they actually made a decent team. Logan, despite being a grown man, found himself actually struggling to keep up. By the time Noah scored the first goal, he threw his hands in the air. "We're winning." Claire chuckled from the sidelines. Logan, catching his breath, pointed at Liam. "You're the real mastermind, huh?" Liam shrugged. "You're predictable." Logan laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." The game continued, filled with laughter, competition, and more running than Logan had done in years. At one point, Noah tripped, falling into the grass with a dramatic oof. Logan immediately stepped forward. "You okay, buddy?" Noah blinked up at him, then grinned. "Yeah, but you have to help me up." Logan hesitated for half a second before reaching down. Noah grabbed his hand, his small fingers curling around Logan's much larger ones as he pulled himself up. The moment was small, but it mattered. Logan felt it, and by the way Claire's expression softened from where she stood, she felt it too. A step forward. As the afternoon stretched on, Logan found himself sitting on a park bench, watching Noah and Liam chase each other in the grass. Claire sat beside him, silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "They like you." Logan turned to her. "I like them too." Claire exhaled. "This is new for them, Logan. They don't know what this means yet." Logan nodded. "Then I'll show them." Claire hesitated before asking, "And what happens when your life gets busy again? When work calls and you have to choose?" Logan's jaw tightened. For the first time in his life, the answer was easy. He looked at her, voice steady. "Then I choose them." Claire's breath hitched. She looked at him like she wanted to believe him, needed to believe him, but was too scared to. Logan reached for her hand, not forcefully, not demanding, but gently. "I'm not going anywhere, Claire." Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't pull away. For the first time, Logan saw something in her expression that hadn't been there before. Hope. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something real. Home is not just a place. Logan Carter had spent his entire life building a world where everything was within his control. He had dictated his own success, crafted his empire from nothing, and made sure that no one, not his competitors, not his so-called friends, and certainly not fate, would have power over him. But as he stood at Claire's front door later that evening, a takeout bag in one hand and a quiet determination in his chest, he realized that control had never been his to begin with. Not here. Not with them. This was new, uncharted territory. And for the first time in years, Logan wasn't afraid of stepping into the unknown. An invitation inside. Claire answered the door, her expression unreadable. "You're back." Logan smirked. "Told you I would be." She eyed the takeout bag in his hand. "What's that?" He shrugged. "Dinner. Thought I'd return the favor since you made breakfast." Claire hesitated, glancing back inside. The soft sounds of cartoons playing in the background told him the boys were still awake. Finally, she sighed and stepped aside. "Come in." It wasn't much, but it was enough. Family dinner. For the first time. Noah was the first to notice Logan. "You're back." He grinned, bouncing off the couch and running up to him. "Did you bring food?" Logan chuckled. "What gave it away?" He held up the takeout bag. Noah gasped dramatically. "Mommy." Logan brought forward. Liam, ever the quieter one, peeked over from the couch, studying Logan with the same analytical expression as before. "What kind of food?" "Pizza." Logan smirked. "Hope you like it." Noah cheered while Liam gave an approving nod. Pizza's okay. Claire sighed. You didn't have to do this, Logan. Logan met her gaze. I wanted to. Something in Claire's eyes softened before she quickly turned away. As the boys scrambled to set the table, Claire moved toward the kitchen, grabbing plates. Logan followed her, lowering his voice so the boys wouldn't hear. I'm not just showing up for them, Claire. She stilled, gripping the plates a little tighter. Logan. He stepped closer. I know you think I'll get tired of this, that I'll disappear when things get complicated, but I won't. Claire exhaled, placing the plates down on the counter. You can't just fix 3 years overnight. I know. His voice was steady. But I can start now. She turned, looking up at him, searching for something, a reason to believe him. Before she could say anything, Noah's voice rang from the living room. Hurry up, we're hungry. Claire sighed, shaking her head. Fine, but don't expect me to let my guard down just yet. Logan smirked. Wouldn't dream of it. A moment that should have always been. Dinner was loud, messy, chaotic, and it was the best thing Logan had ever experienced. Noah talked endlessly, rambling about dinosaurs, cartoons, and how he definitely would have won the soccer game if Liam had passed the ball more. Liam, despite pretending to be uninterested, occasionally added quiet corrections, pointing out flaws in Noah's logic. Claire tried to maintain order, but it was clear she was used to their back and forth. And Logan, for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was on the outside looking in. He belonged here. He didn't just see his sons, he knew them now. He knew that Noah had the kind of energy that never seemed to run out, that he jumped from topic to topic like a whirlwind, never slowing down. He knew that Liam was thoughtful, always observing before speaking, always analyzing the world around him. He knew that Claire had raised them to be kind, smart, and strong, without him. That last part burned, but he wouldn't let that be their future. The question that changed everything. After dinner, the boys were playing in the living room, their tiny hands busy with a toy dinosaur set. Logan leaned against the counter, watching them while Claire washed dishes. Without looking at him, she spoke. You didn't have to stay this long. Logan glanced at her. You want me to leave? She didn't answer right away. I don't know. He turned fully to her. Claire, I know this isn't easy for you, but I meant what I said. I'm not here for a visit. I'm here to stay. She sighed, finally meeting his gaze. You say that now, Logan, but what happens when your company demands your time? When your perfect, structured world gets thrown off balance? You don't like unpredictability. Logan's jaw tightened. They're not an inconvenience, Claire. They're my sons. Claire hesitated, then glanced toward the boys, who were still deep in their game. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. They don't know what to call you. Logan's breath caught. He looked back at them. Noah and Liam, his sons. The word dad had never been spoken between them. Not once. Not yet. His chest tightened. What do you want me to do? Claire exhaled. I want to protect them. That's all I've ever wanted. Logan nodded, swallowing hard. Then let me protect them too. Silence stretched between them. Then from the living room, Noah called out, Hey, Logan. Logan turned. Yeah? Noah beamed. Can you play with us? Logan's throat tightened. It wasn't Dad. But it was something. And it was enough. For now. The first goodbye that wasn't really goodbye. Later that night, as Logan stood at the front door, preparing to leave, Noah tugged at his sleeve. You'll come back tomorrow, right? Logan crouched down, looking into his son's bright, hopeful eyes. You want me to? Noah nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, and maybe you can read another story. Logan smiled. Then I'll be here. Liam, standing a few steps away, didn't say anything at first. But as Logan straightened, Liam finally spoke. Are you gonna keep coming back? Logan's heart clenched. He bent slightly, looking Liam right in the eye. "I'm not going anywhere, buddy." Liam studied him, his sharp little mind trying to determine whether or not Logan was telling the truth. Then, after a long pause, Liam nodded. Claire, watching from the doorway, exhaled slowly. She didn't argue this time. And as Logan walked to his car, he knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning. Because home wasn't just a place. It was them. And no matter what, he wasn't leaving again.